I was younger then, brimming with arrogance and a lust for battle. Back when I thought I'd seen it all, fought it all. The stars held no secrets for me, or so I believed. My crew and I, a band of hardened mercenaries, took jobs across the galaxy. We reveled in the thrill of combat, in the spoils of war. But that day, that planet, everything changed. It was supposed to be routine. We were hired to raid a backwater world, long forgotten by the wider galaxy. We were told the inhabitants were weak, remnants of some primitive species, barely capable of defending themselves. Easy pickings. We landed, fully armed, ready for a slaughter. The air was thick, oppressive. The sky a dull gray, the land barren as far as the eye could see. But we weren't concerned. After all, we'd faced far worse conditions and triumphed. We spread out, moving through the desolate ruins that were once cities. There was no resistance. No signs of life. Just broken buildings and the wind howling through empty streets. It felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. My instincts told me to be wary, but pride silenced that voice. We pressed forward, seeking the resources we were promised. That's when we saw him. He stood alone, at the entrance of a crumbling structure. A single figure. A human. The sight of him made us laugh. He was small, gaunt even, dressed in ragged armor that looked centuries old. One man. That's all. We figured he was a relic from a time long past, some poor soul left behind after his people had torn themselves apart. My lieutenant stepped forward, raised his rifle, and barked a command. The human didn't move. He just stood there, watching us. His eyes, I'll never forget those eyes. They weren't the eyes of a broken man. No fear. No hesitation. Only calm. Cold, calculating. He spoke then, his voice low but clear. He gave us a choice: leave now, or face the consequences. The audacity of it. We were the best, the strongest. We'd raised planets and toppled empires. And here was this pathetic human, daring to challenge us? We laughed harder. My lieutenant aimed his weapon, eager to be done with it. Then it began. The human moved so fast, none of us saw it coming. One moment he was standing there, the next my lieutenant was on the ground, his neck twisted at an impossible angle. The rest of us froze, disbelief locking our limbs. A single human had just killed one of our best without a sound, without a struggle. We fired, but he was already gone, slipping into the shadows. Chaos erupted. We were shouting, scrambling for cover, trying to locate him, but he was everywhere and nowhere. Shots rang out, missing their mark, hitting only the ruins around us. Then, one by one, my crew began to fall. Not by bullets or blades, but by the human's hands, silent, brutal, efficient. I heard the screams over the comms, saw the terror in their eyes as they were hunted. And hunted is the right word for it. We weren't in control. We weren't the predators. We were the prey, and that human, he was the predator. He moved like a ghost, slipping through the ruins as if he knew every inch of the terrain. We tried to regroup, tried to mount a defense, but it was useless. Every time we thought we had him pinned down, he would strike from another angle, always 2 steps ahead. My men were some of the best warriors in the galaxy, trained to deal with any threat. But this human, he was something else entirely. I remember the sounds more than the sights. The muffled thuds, the quick gasps as another one of my crew was taken down. It was as if the entire planet itself was working with him, hiding him, guiding him through the wreckage. He didn't rely on advanced weapons or technology. He didn't need them. His body was the weapon. His mind was sharper than any blade. At one point, we managed to corner him. 4 of us, closing in from all sides. We had him in our sights, or at least we thought we did. I could see him clearly now, his chest rising and falling steadily, no fear in his eyes, no panic. We advanced, weapons drawn, ready to end it. But he didn't run. He didn't fight. He just watched us. "Leave," he said again, his voice just as calm as before. "This is your last chance." None of us moved. None of us believed him. After all, What could one human do against 4 armed warriors? We opened fire, unleashing everything we had. But he wasn't there. Somehow, in the blink of an eye, he was behind us. And then, one by one, we fell. He didn't kill us all right away. No. He wanted us to understand. He wanted us to fear. Each strike was precise, calculated, meant to incapacitate rather than end. He was teaching us a lesson, showing us that we were outmatched. That we had made a mistake. I'll never forget the sound of my comrade's scream when the human took him down. It wasn't the scream of pain, it was the scream of realization. The scream of knowing that everything we had assumed, everything we had believed about this species, was wrong. There was a moment where I saw him clearly, crouched over the body of one of my fallen men. His hands were steady, his eyes focused, as if he were inspecting his work. And then, for the first time, I saw it, his face wasn't one of rage or bloodlust. It was of purpose. Every move he made was deliberate, a part of some larger plan that we couldn't comprehend. We underestimated him. We underestimated all of them. By the time I managed to pull myself together, half of my crew was gone. Just gone. The human had dismantled us like we were nothing, like we were toys in his hands. The others, the survivors, they were panicking, begging me to call for retreat. They weren't warriors anymore. They were broken, their spirits shattered by one man. And what was I supposed to do? We tried to run. Of course we tried. But it was too late. He didn't let us leave. We ran. We had no other choice. Fear gripped us like a vice, and every instinct screamed for survival. What had started as a confident raid turned into a desperate scramble for our lives. My crew, once proud and fierce, had been reduced to scattered prey. I could hear them shouting over the comms, their voices cracking with terror, begging for help that would never come. But this human, he didn't chase us in a way that made sense. He didn't charge in with reckless aggression like we were used to. No, he stalked us, methodically, like a hunter savoring the chase. He let us think we had escaped, allowed us moments of false hope before striking again. It wasn't about killing us all at once. It was about dismantling us, breaking us down piece by piece. I heard another scream, this time farther behind me, and then silence. That was the worst part, the silence that followed each attack. No explosions, no gunfire, just the sudden, eerie quiet of someone disappearing. My heart pounded in my chest as I kept moving, weaving through the ruins, praying that I wasn't next. We reached what we thought was a safe point, some dilapidated structure with a vantage point over the area. There were only 3 of us left by then. We were panting, shaken, clutching our weapons like they were the only things keeping us tethered to reality. I remember the looks on their faces, my last 2 men, fear, disbelief, and that gnawing realization that we were out of our depth. "We need to call for evac," one of them said, his voice trembling. "We can't stay here. We're not getting out of here." I muttered, more to myself than to them. I didn't believe it at first, didn't want to believe it, but the truth was staring me in the face. We had been outclassed in every possible way. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the ruins. It wasn't loud, just the faintest sound of movement, but it was enough. We froze, gripping our weapons tighter, scanning every shadow, every corner. I knew he was out there. I knew he was watching. Waiting. And that was the worst part, not knowing when or where he would strike next. One of my men couldn't take it. He panicked, bolted out into the open, screaming for the human to show himself, to fight him face to face. But that wasn't how this human operated. The moment my man stepped out, he was gone. It happened so fast, I didn't even see it. 1 second he was standing there, the next, his body crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The remaining soldier and I exchanged a glance. Either of us spoke. What was there to say? He was toying with us. We were already dead. We just didn't know when the final blow would come. I couldn't think straight. The fear was like poison, clouding my mind, making it hard to focus. I kept replaying everything in my head, every mistake, every misstep that had led us to this moment. We were mercenaries, killers, veterans of countless wars. How had it come to this? How had one human, just one, done this to us? And then I saw him. He appeared out of the shadows, almost casually, standing a few meters away. He wasn't even armed anymore, not with anything we could see. He just stood there, watching us. It wasn't a look of triumph, though. No gloating. No anger. Just calm. "Go," he said, his voice low but unmistakable. "There's nothing left for you here." The last of my men shook his head, as if refusing to accept the reality in front of him. He raised his weapon, hands trembling, and aimed at the human. Before I could stop him, the human moved. It was like nothing I had ever seen, effortless, almost slow, but faster than I could react. A blur. In an instant, my comrade was on the ground, unconscious. I was the only one left now. And still, the human hadn't killed me. He could have ended it at any moment, but he didn't. He just stood there, waiting, as if daring me to make a choice. My weapon felt heavy in my hands. Useless. I didn't even bother raising it. What would be the point? He had already won. He had always been in control, from the moment we landed on this cursed planet. I took a step back, then another. The human didn't move to follow. He just watched as I stumbled away, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I turned and ran, not stopping until I was far enough that I couldn't see him anymore. I don't remember how long I ran. Time felt like it had no meaning, just the relentless drive to put as much distance between me and that human as possible. Eventually, exhaustion forced me to stop. My body gave out before my mind could, and I collapsed against a rock, gasping for breath, drenched in fear more than sweat. I had survived. Somehow, against all odds, I had escaped. But what was left of me? I had been broken in ways I hadn't thought possible. The creature we had mocked, the human we thought was nothing more than a relic, had dismantled us, destroyed us, without mercy but also without cruelty. It wasn't about hate or revenge. It was simply about survival. And that made it worse. I stayed on the planet for hours, hiding, waiting, hoping for extraction. The silence that hung over everything was unbearable. I kept expecting him to appear again, to finish what he started. But he never came. I was left alone with my thoughts, haunted by what I had witnessed. Eventually, rescue did come, but not for the others. I was the only one left to tell the tale. Now here I am, in this tavern, years later. Older, maybe wiser, though I'm not sure that's true. The galaxy has forgotten Earth. It's become nothing more than a ghost story, a planet that no one talks about because no one remembers. But I do. I remember. The crowd around me listens with rapt attention, though I can see some of them doubting my words. They haven't seen what I've seen. They haven't felt that kind of fear, the kind that burrows into your bones and never leaves. Some of them think I'm exaggerating. Some think I'm just a washed-up merc telling tall tales to earn a few more credits before I fade into obscurity. I can see it in their eyes, the way they exchange glances, amused but unimpressed. But one of them, a young mercenary with more confidence than sense, laughs outright. "A human? Really?" he sneers, shaking his head. "You expect us to believe that one human wiped out your entire crew? Sounds like you're just looking for an excuse for losing." I don't respond right away. There's no point in arguing. It's not about what they believe. It's about what I know. "You weren't there," I finally say, my voice low and tired. "You didn't see what I saw." The young merc rolls his eyes, taking a swig of his drink, clearly unimpressed. "Yeah, well, I think you've had one too many, old man." Before I can respond, the tavern doors swing open. The noise inside dies down immediately, conversations cut off in mid-sentence as everyone turns to look. Standing in the doorway is a figure, cloaked in shadows, the faintest outline of battle-worn armor visible in the dim light. I feel my stomach drop. My heart skips a beat, and for the first time in years, that familiar cold fear returns, crawling up my spine. It's him. I know it before I even get a clear look. It's the human. He steps into the light, his eyes scanning the room, calculating. There's something about the way he moves, slow, deliberate, that sends a chill through the air. Everyone feels it. Even the young merc who had been laughing moments before falls silent, his smirk fading as he watches the newcomer approach. The human doesn't say a word. He doesn't need to. His presence alone is enough to make the entire tavern uneasy. He walks up to the bar, his movements smooth, almost casual, and orders a drink. The bartender hesitates for just a second too long, eyes wide, before scrambling to comply. I can't take my eyes off him. It's like seeing a ghost, a nightmare I thought I'd escaped, now standing just a few meters away. And he hasn't changed. Not really. There's still that same quiet menace about him, the same aura of danger that made every hair on my body stand on end. The human takes his drink, turning to survey the room, and for a moment, just a brief, agonizing moment, his eyes lock with mine. I freeze. My body wants to move, to run, but I can't. I'm rooted to the spot, trapped in that gaze. And then, just as quickly, he looks away, as if I'm nothing more than another face in the crowd. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. No one speaks. No one dares move. The young merc who had mocked me earlier is visibly shaken, his bravado gone. He leans closer to his comrades, whispering something I can't hear, but I can see the fear in his eyes now. It's the same fear I felt all those years ago. The human finishes his drink and places the empty glass on the counter with a quiet clink. Then, without a word, he turns and walks out the door, leaving the tavern as silent as it had been when he entered. For a long moment, no one moves. The only sound is the soft hum of the tavern's machinery, a dull background noise that seems louder in the aftermath of his presence. Finally, the young mercenary speaks, his voice shaky. That was a human?" he asks, his confidence shattered. "That was really—" I don't answer. I don't need to. The look on his face says it all. He knows. They all know now. I stand up, finishing what's left of my drink, and toss a few credits on the table. I don't bother saying goodbye to the others. There's nothing left to say. They'll figure it out in time, just like I did. As I walk out into the cold night air, I take one last look over my shoulder at the tavern. The door swings shut behind me, and I can still feel their eyes on my back, the weight of their newfound understanding hanging heavy in the air. Humans are not to be trifled with. I learned that lesson long ago. Now maybe they'll start to understand it too.